Hello. Hello. All right. Let's talk about stuff. The impending water crisis, the impending societal instability, if there isn't already. How is there not a recession? I don't understand with all this inflation, all this malarkey. Even just reading, I was going to read, or I still might, Florida Rivers book. Very last paragraph by Doug Alderson. Pretty good pictures. There's another great Florida Rivers book, but it's kind of a little bit dry, I guess. More for beginners that aren't aware of all the different rivers and all the variety of rivers in Florida. Anyways, this is more of it's not quite a coffee table book, although you could say that. It's also some solid information. It's kind of a mix of the two. It doesn't have absolutely all the information. Florida Rivers, Doug Alderson book. I think it's fairly new, yeah, because it talked about 2020. Anyways, this last paragraph. In Florida, the 2020 Florida legislature outlawed the granting of legal rights to rivers in an attempt to thwart initial moves to grant personhood rights to Santa Fe and other rivers. That doesn't prevent people from placing rivers in high regard, however, and pushing for greater protections. And I've been there. I've been to these meetings. Well, not rivers in particular, but Board of County Commissioner meetings. Some of them clearly stand up for progress and development. Some of them at least pretend to listen to the people and follow what they're after. I think politicians are mostly tricksters, delude the people. There seemed to be a golden age of Florida governors, but look what's happened lately. Not telling you how to vote, but clearly I don't particularly really like either choice, but I think change is warranted. I'm not telling people how to vote, but you want to save the rivers, have water in the future, slow down this progress, because Florida, I think they said by 2030 is set to have 26 million people, and just a few years ago there was less than 20 million, even though most of it is in Central and South Florida. Still, no place is safe. If the Suwannee River, the Oyster Reef, there's barely any people that live there. There's a whole bunch of springs, and already a few years ago, huge environmental impacts from too many water withdrawals, causing the oyster reefs to need restoration. It's just ridiculous. Although it's been decades and decades in the making, and these rivers are still something else. They're still going to love them till the end, or always have a place in my heart, regardless of certain trends that seem inevitable. But I'm just here to enjoy life, not to be too clingy, at least in theory. Enjoy the lessons, and it's not easy. Anyways, before I forget, yesterday I, at long last, made a quality, well, it was kind of a spur of the moment decision, but I think I'm really proud of this playlist that I made, compiled about the Suwannee River. It's called Suwannee River, Florida. In the playlist, there's so many things rivers can teach you, rivers reveal. They have so many mysteries, especially a wild, impressive, undammed, relatively unspoiled wild river like the Suwannee River of North Florida, the Gulf Coast. Don't get me wrong, there's many impressive nature preserves, rivers, even walking along the St. John's. I know that river has definitely been impacted, definitely full of mysteries, and I've read a quality book, a large part of it. That's definitely a great case study of river resilience and balancing of nature and human development. Although it's pretty clear, if you study Rivers that have less dams, less people, they're obviously healthier. Not to say people are all evil, that's just the way of life, but yeah, check out the playlist. You want to see what I'm talking about, even though nothing compares to actually being there. You know, that you have no distractions, you have nothing. It's like the difference between trying to watch a movie, kind of like trying to watch a movie at home, try not to be distracted, watching this little picture versus being in the movie theater, being immersed in it. You've never seen it before. Although you can study a place, but it's not the same as actually being there and seeing what it's like. And definitely having that connection with nature is definitely worthwhile, even with all the risks of sanity, risk of heartbreak. What did I say about love in the Illogical Bronco Evolution podcast number 4? It's worth it to be vulnerable, stick your neck out there. To a certain degree, depending on your resilience and where you are in life. You know, nobody wants to be a rock, though it may feel like sometimes we have to be, for short bursts at least. But anyways, it is ridiculous how easy corporations become legally people. And then I was on Reddit and somebody was posting, not the Onion, about how a river got person rights somewhere else. I think it was in America somewhere. I was like, yes, that was a win. But that's the thing. You can write to the governors and legislature, but the real progress, I think, comes from lawsuits. Just look at our Santa Fe, how there are Supreme Court battles, the Apalachicola River, Apalachicola, Chattahoochee, Flint River system. Of course, Florida lost that battle because there were too many factors that led to the oyster collapse a few years ago or so. Yeah, I think it was like a little over 10 years ago and still hasn't recovered. That was supposed to be a really dynamic, diverse, wild, scenic river. I might go there next year, or at least the O'Loughney. I want to explore more rivers that also have sturgeon. Probably won't see them compared to the Suwannee, but I want to explore more while I can. Just in general, have fun. Have a more broad worldview, more than just, oh, I've heard about this place, I know some facts about it, versus actually being there. Even if you just visit, makes all the difference, you know. Even though less people probably ask about certain places more than you might want. I don't know. You don't really do things to appease other people, but just being interesting is good enough. Which, if you're going to be interested in something, to be interesting, you have to be interested, to quote the great Alan Watts. Okay, I need to collect my thoughts, hold on. And I'll most likely talk about, even though there's one great comment I made, YouTube comment, long, lengthy YouTube comment. Sometimes I wonder if people that follow me because they were seeing the sense I make in comments, thought-provoking, spiritually provoking, logical sense I make sometimes in YouTube comment land, more than my actual videos, because a lot of them are just audios. I don't know. Tell me in the comments what I'm doing right, what you want more of. No, I'm not doing this for other people per se. If you want to listen to what I'm saying, good for them, I guess. It's a blessing and a curse, probably. As with being interested in this world, loving things about this doomed, natural, getting less and less green world. Anyways, yeah, I'll talk about my fight against the Northern Turnpike extension before I backed out of it. And yeah, that was early 2022. And this is like the longest short year I've ever lived. because the older you get, the more it goes by fast. But some things are just keep lingering on and on and on. I don't have to explain how things work. People know this. But actually, I made a video on one of my very favorite animals. Well, I'm still on the fence whether I want to post it. If you guys want to see it or listen to it, me talking about Gulf sturgeon, reading off some general information. I was going to add some pictures. I was like, is this too much work for what it's worth? There's already some solid slideshows, documentaries, etc. Plenty of web links about Gulf sturgeon if you want to learn about them. But if you guys want, anyone wants my takes and general readings, I guess, just let me know, because I mean, I'm telling you, I hear other people talk about them and heard people, and just knowing my feelings about it, that sure, it's just a big fish jumping out of water, but you gotta think, in 2022, in Florida of all places, how the heck are there still sturgeon, right? That's the amazing thing. I keep thinking from time to time, maybe I should be more amazed that they're still around more than bemoan their decline or inevitable decline, or because they're really only holding out really well in the Suwannee River. And if that population is really impacted, then they become really endangered and really screwed. But then again, if they don't have that resilience, maybe with all this climate change, sea level rise, springs going away, more hurricanes, they're probably screwed, as with most people alive on this planet, probably. But yeah, if you guys want to listen to that video, I mean, you have to look at the bright side, or the lighthearted nature of it, relatively. And if some people are wondering, why do I keep talking about the Suwannee River, hyping up this murky hole, I would say muddy hole, but it's mostly rocky, it's very fast current. I don't really think, I mean, compared to most Florida rivers are dammed, very slow, very young, not all that impressive except for finding alligators. I mean, they're still nice to get away, nice to be in nature, but you want a real song-worthy, noteworthy, unforgettable river. That's the Suwannee River. It's like, I look at videos of people on YouTube, they're like, oh, we're visiting Florida, we're going to kayak down a river, oh, let's go down the Withlacoochee or go down the Hillsborough. I'm thinking like, what are you doing? Unless you're already in Tampa and don't want to travel. Anyways, I could go on and on and on. As with fossiling, if I really got in the mood, tennis, lots of things, but lately this is what I've been into. Not to say I'm burnt out forever on fossiling, you never know, but with things being so interesting, exploring so much, feeling so much surprises. And actually it began with the Santa Fe River, right? Because North Florida has some of the only, in the whole state, that's like the only region you can find Eocene fossils, right? Really relatively ancient, like 30-40 million year old fossils. I wanted to find some shark teeth, and everybody was telling me, or it seemed to be, oh, you don't want to go in the Suwannee River, it's too fast, swift, murky, if you're gonna, or you can't dig, right? Because I guess there's more springs and the water district people will get onto you, unlike on the Peace River. So basically, okay, I was like, okay, I need to get into snorkeling, and I'm going to go on the Santa Fe River, rent a kayak, and hopefully find some shark teeth. I didn't find any shark teeth. It seems that you need to be around rapids because those cut through the rock more, but I didn't know that. But I still had a grand old time. I realized that, and this was early 2022, right before major grief and major COVID stuff. There's no way anybody could have predicted that. It almost feels like 2019. Anyways, then I realized, holy crap, I can have just as much fulfillment and fun without having to get in the water and dig for stuff and snorkel for stuff. Though there is fulfillment and there is a lot to... I mean, everybody's different, right? Some people love to be in nature to fish, some to hunt, some need that extra. I don't know if I'm just more sensitive because I've been through so much, or I just like being alone with my thoughts and thinking about my place in the world, how this world has changed, looking for animals, etc. I'm telling you, man, everybody has their version of Eden, and at this time and place, it's very hard to beat North Central Florida. I mean, you hear about so many places. Every place has their own features, and it's hard to say. I mean, you can't hold me down any one place for too long, probably. But if I had to pick one place I couldn't travel, even though that would mess with my comparisons and I would take things for granted, you need variety as much as you feels like you just want to be in one place and learn everything about one species or one place or one river. Like, you appreciate them more because you know that there's the comparisons matter, and that's how you weigh quality ultimately, whether you realize it or not. Though quality is still subjective, even if lots of people agree on something, agree on the trends. And anyways, what was I going on about? So yeah, you could say that 2020 for me was a very personally shattering year, and the COVID pandemic felt like it had almost nothing to do with it. Not to say I've been through hell and back more than any other person. You know, it's not to say some people are stronger or weaker, but people are definitely affected by things differently. The intensity, the persistence of problems, their own, what they bring to the table, or have or don't have. But I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. What do I know? They go by research, and a lot of it is pseudoscience. But is it time to talk about the turnpike, the inevitable, looming cutting up of Florida by turnpike? Right, it was going to be the barge canal that was going to cut and destroy the lowermost Withlacoochee, the lowermost Ocklawaha, and the lowermost St. John's, although they've all been impacted. But now, Florida's at risk of being cut up too much by toll roads for no reason that nobody wants except to build more avenues for billionaires, right? Because at first, I thought, or I knew it was, right, there's no traffic demands between Wildwood in Central Florida, Northish, Central Florida, and Chiefland, North Central Florida. They had 3 proposed toll routes cutting through a lot of nice places in Florida: the Rainbow River, Withlacoochee, up to near the lowermost Suwannee, which is one of the most scenic, wild, pristine areas still out there in Florida or anywhere. And they're trying to build up Chiefland. That's a whole nother story. And I wish the Suwannee River Water Management District would give out less permits. And I mean, they're pushing for more. It seems to be they're for restoration, protecting what's still out there, claiming more land, but that depends on people buying up land and protecting the land. They can only do so much in and of themselves. They can't defeat the tragedy of the commons. Right? When everybody's pumping water and everybody's had it for free, how can you determine who deserves it more than others? That's a whole nother philosophical debate, but it's still intertwined with this issue of who owns the water, who deserves to dam up the rivers, to use the river water before it reaches the Gulf or a sea or a lake. That's why it's called tragedy. Anyways, before I get too gloomy, I mean, it can happen anywhere nowadays if you're not careful. I mean, if you don't accept reality and accept the facts, you're living in a minefield, right? You have to balance not to say you have to be optimistic, but definitely to be aware and in the present. and appreciate what's still out there and the lessons. Oh yeah. Actually, before I get too caught up in tangents and saying harsh truths, being too serious, I've actually had somebody tell me in person, you should use more humor in those podcasts. This is when I was mostly making shark podcasts and going through Max Thriving, thinking that's what life was all about, right? Nobody made an ancient shark podcast. I'm still surprised nobody has taken up the reins. There's so many papers out there, so much research, literature. But I think a lot of it comes down to the fact most papers don't have very insightful earth-shattering realizations. Lots of lists. I mean, you have like estimating megalodon body length size. You have certain trends and certain, but it's hard to say, oh my goodness, I could talk all day about this, and it's not the same as actually going out and fossil hunting, and I don't know, there's still fulfillment to be had and realizations to be had and enjoying research papers, but I think the emotional self can only enjoy dry facts so much as I think I need all the books in the world, right? What's that if I don't go out and explore the real world or see some scenery? But man, I keep getting sidetracked. Anyways, I like this video by Rodney Norman called Enjoy Your Stupid Life. It was something that went semi-viral apparently at some point, and basically spitting some facts, man, just about life is what you make it. Nobody has figured it out. Nobody probably will. So just live your life. I think maybe that's why earlier today I kind of realized, why do I feel so compelled to find or make some magnum opus or some great old slideshow if it's not what I really want to do or not desire. Some part of me still wants it to enjoy, but if the effort is not worth not to say anybody is always all logical, but anyways, continuing on what I was talking about earlier, Santa Fe River, exploring that river by kayak and snorkeling a little bit for fossils, even though I only found turtle shell, pretty much. There's still plenty of fossils there, and also the suwannee, if you want to stick your neck out that much in the suwannee. I've heard people drown in the suwannee, even just like swimming in a spring, then they dip their feet a little bit in the river, but the river currents are fast, man. I've tried fishing there, and you could feel that water pressure, even in the lower, relatively lazy. Also, it depends what season it is, right? When it's high flood water, man, that current was trucking. I couldn't believe it when I first visited in March 2021, right? Because it was not, that's the dry season here in Central Florida, but it rains more in North Florida for some reason over the winter. And if it rains a bunch in Georgia, which apparently all the counties partially or fully drain into the Suwannee River. I'm telling you, man, the river basin in the Suwannee River is massive. So much water, so much from rain and springs. And I know somebody is thinking, don't tell Nestle, but they're already pumping. People have been pumping way too much out of that basin for way too long. But anyways, still impressive, still natural, relatively enough. Alright, so I have massive grief from losing my best friend, best kitty ever, very connected. It was a gradual decline, but man, major grief never really fully goes away and creates a massive void, especially being burnt out with fossiling. Always have a soft spot for fossiling, don't get me wrong, but I'm still kind of iffy about it, at least on hiatus. I don't know, I bought some Suwannee River fossil teeth, auriculitis, which I actually don't regret. There's some nice, this is a MacLeod ancestor that lived in the Eocene long time ago, dozens of millions of years ago. And of course, I'm the one to sniff the fossils to get more of that Suwannee River scent. I have not swam in the Suwannee River, but I swam in Manatee Springs. Right. Very impressive first magnitude spring that's definitely been impacted. It had lots of algae, but at least the first time it felt like Eden, right? Because there are a whole bunch of mullet. I saw a baby gator, still the only alligator I've seen so far in the Suwannee River Basin. I heard on a podcast once there's some big ones in there apparently, at least the upper Suwannee, where it's much less brackish and more, well, actually I don't think it gets brackish until the very lowermost Suwannee. Even then, kayaking the lowermost Suwannee, which I could go talk at length because I kayaked that in large part because that's going to be the first to really change over the years with sea level rise, right? More saltwater intrusion is definitely going to alter that river delta, and already it's amazing how much the lower Mississippi River Basin has altered, but this talk is not about that. And I've never been there besides driving past it, and that's an impressive river, and that's definitely dried up. That had more to do with less rain, not enough rain. But all rivers fluctuate a bunch and are impacted by drought and water withdrawals and pollution. It's an ongoing thing. Can't really define it in black and white. But yeah, definitely if you've never seen Florida's big, impressive, turquoise, very clear springs, definitely check that out. Ocala has some very nice springs. Alexander, Salt Springs, I know there's other impressive ones. Suwannee River, Santa Fe Springs are definitely very clear, very healthy compared to most other massive springs in the state. Wakulla is technically the largest, I think still, in the Panhandle. And I guess in a way it surprises me that the Apalachicola River is it has the most water of any river in the state, although it definitely receives a lot of water from Georgia. Would have even more if it wasn't for that dam, but Anthropocene, what major river doesn't have a dam besides the Suwannee? And even then, is that going to last forever? Well, I'd like to see people try. Well, I say that, but I think in China they've made some massive dams. They've dammed up way too much the Yangtze River. I'm telling you, at this rate, by how imperiled Florida's natural, big, nice, clear springs are, they're already far from pristine, most of them, because they have so many nutrients. All of them have algae, even Silver Springs. That's a well-known fact. There's some statues underwater and they have to power blast them to get the algae off. But yeah, man, it's going to be rough in a few years here if people don't stop moving to Florida. I mean, it's already happening. Infrastructure can't possibly keep up, and there will be water shortages even more places. For as much rain as Florida gets, we still use too much. People, industry, agriculture. Suwannee River, I've said this before, agriculture is the number one threat to freshwater at the moment. So if, hypothetically, I know there are ways the river fends off people, right? There are metaphysical phenomena that seem to be true that otherwise, it could be a lot of coincidences, or there could be metaphysical truths, or it could be a gray area that the Suwannee River or something behind it has fended off human destructiveness for so long. And Ted Bundy, his last crime was committed, or part of it was related to the Suwannee River Basin, and then soon after he was caught. Nature doesn't know morality, but I don't know, maybe that was correlation is not causation type of thing. But anyways, because I heard plenty of times they were going to make the capital of Florida, and that means massive urban sprawl, development, destruction of a lower river, right? Tear up the banks, make it super polluted, or that's what it would spell eventually. They were in a rush to make a capital for some reason, and they got lost. They couldn't find or decide what the main river channel of the Suwannee was. I mean, I laugh about it because I've been there, but then again, I had the help of Google Maps and studying the map, and I launched from the very small town of Suwannee. I'm telling you, if you ever go there, and people on Facebook on one of the, I think it's called Old Florida or Unseen Florida, they post where the best small towns, and nobody posts Suwannee, either because they've never been there or they were bored out of their skulls or something. There's only population very low. There's only one store. If you have a medical emergency, you're probably screwed. But I'm glad I went there and kayaked down West Pass, the main mouth of the Suwannee, and then up the East Pass, which is what's the word for it when a river divulsion? I know most of the, like 60-something% of the water going out of the Suwannee into the Gulf goes out West Pass, and then East Pass is where the sturgeon migrate up and down. Probably path of least resistance, but it's also connected to the main river. Both are very scenic, very protected at the present, but with the water wars coming up, with fascism going up, are they going to protect all this nature? I don't know. I hope so. Provides so many benefits. Oh, there's a Supreme Court decision coming up. The federal protections of wetlands may go away. Yeah, so I'm definitely posting this lecture because there's some serious issues out there, man, that people are asleep to. I wish more people were up in arms about. But no, it's all about meme culture and what celebrities hitting who from time to time. What are people out of the loop right now about? Let's check Reddit. I guarantee you half of them are going to be ridiculous stuff. But no, anybody talking logical sense is a conspiracist nowadays. Man. Maybe I'll make another video for another time about my turnpike fight. Not to say it's not worth. If I lived up there, yeah, I would go to those meetings all the time. I would be up in arms all the time. And right now it's on hiatus because obviously DeSantis is behind the turnpikes. I can go on about that. I mean, it's pretty obvious, clear as day, when he's not stopping economic progress, people moving into the state, and he made it free tolls when the Hurricane Ian hit. Right, so he's trying to boost how many people use the turnpike and then use those statistics to say, oh, we need more toll roads. And it's all for hurricane. But no, the real motive is he wants to pave over the majority of Florida, make more taxes and more economic quote-unquote progress. Okay, so Reddit out of the loop. YouTube comments, Elon Musk, Twitter. Yeah, these are not real issues. Temporary paper license plates. Oh. Sharp. Oh, that nobody's upvoting that, so it's probably nothing. Again, some people, they probably saw all this Florida stuff coming. Probably moved out long ago. They knew it was screwed. Which is a shame because I'm telling you, there's so many nice, pristine, unique places in Florida still in 2022 somehow. Because people in the past protected it. So it is kind of a blessing and a curse to love it. But if you have nothing else to lose in life, relatively, and why wouldn't I stand up for what I love and what's been there for me? much as I logically can, spiritually, emotionally. Yeah, I'm going to make another video about insights when I was going to those meetings, a few Board of County Commissioner meetings, but it was clear that, and through the Facebook group, anti-turnpike, more toll roads, which is going on all over the state, not just North Florida. Even back in May 2022, there was I don't know if it's still going through, but there's like a split oak forest somewhere in Central or South Florida. They were going to build a toll road going across a nature preserve. And yeah, I know other people in other states where apparently, there has to be more corrupt states and more environmentally friendly states, but probably expensive AF to live at, which is one of the problems. Florida is relatively cheap, but then again, there's a bunch of mosquitoes, crazy people, drugs, alligators, etc. Don't move. I'm telling you, my brother and I were talking about it when he followed me the first time. When I only spoke at 2 meetings, so if you want to be technical about it, you're like, oh, you've only talked to 2 meetings, but I think most of my impact, I talked a lot of sense on the anti-turnpike Facebook group. Talked a lot of sense and got a lot of people fired up, including the main organizer of the movement, who actually doesn't seem all that into nature. She lived in Williston, so the turnpike would have cut through right by her house. So it's kind of surprising, like, you're putting all this effort going into depth just to fight a road, and you just want less noise. But I don't really care how or why people are against this toll road, even though most people seem to be against it, either because it would cut through their property, cut too close, disturb their peace, etc. Which, who wants that if they can stand up against it? Anyways, traveling with my brother, we were talking, and it's like, why do Northerners want to move here? There's really, sure, there's tourist traps, there's nature, but if you move here, you get used to it. Sure, there's no state income tax, there's no nicer winters, etc. But other than that, like, there's so much more to life than just where you live. You can visit Florida, give us your money that way. Which I only visit the real nice natural places in North Florida so much. So even if I lived far, far away, I'd probably still visit. I'll tell you, they're that nice. But if you live right next to the Suwannee River, she's going to get angry and she's going to flood your house probably. Well, I don't know. I've seen the signs where it shows where historically it's flooded. I think 1998 was a big year, and 1973. Higher than I am, which I think I heard some people had their whole lower part of their house was flooded. I mean, that's a big river system though. That flash flooding, massive. Even the St. John's, still months after the Hurricane Ian, still lots of flooding, lots of destruction. But that's the reality of when you tear up a river too much, tear up the swamps, there's nothing slowing down that flow. And there's still plenty of swamps in the St. John's, relatively, and especially the Suwannee, but even still, unobstructed rivers that have Mother Nature behind it, and lots of tributaries and lots of, right, because when it rains, the water increases exponentially. It's not just, it's lots of sources coming in constantly, which that's why on the lower Suwannee especially, you see lots of houses built on stilts made of cinder blocks. Even in Central Florida, some places around the Alafai River, some places around the coast, probably not enough for how serious it could be. People don't realize that strong storm surges are no joke. Flooded, and especially with sea level rise, it's going to happen more and more and more in Florida. And by year 2100, much of Florida is going to be intruded by saltwater and or underwater. That's just a fact. That's what happens when we burn billions of pounds of carbon into the atmosphere every year. It's a greenhouse gas. That stuff accumulates. And apparently with less burning of aerosols, which create holes in the ozone, that's no good. But apparently aerosols fended off a lot of that warming effect. But as they're being emitted less, get more. This is not a bipartisan issue. It's a global survival issue. This climate crisis, I'm telling you. Who would benefit by hiding the facts? The oil companies. Who are the richest people, organizations in the world? Oil companies. It's been going on for far too long. So many decades of misinformation and witch hunts, for sure. And it definitely didn't help. Al Gore tried so desperately, perhaps using some shifty tactics, but coercion techniques using emotions are not evil in and of itself, but it can be perceived that way. So, probably wrapping up this talk. No, I'm not going to wrap it up with that, but what else have I got to say for now? The Suwannee is a hybrid river that defies categorization because the uppermost is black water, has rapids. Oh yeah, the other part that fended off development in the Suwannee were the big shoals, which are pretty much the only major rapids in Florida. Which, why are there rapids? Because, there's a whole bunch of rocks. Well, rapids apparently form when a waterfall breaks down through erosion. So then you have remnants of a waterfall, which are rapids. Lots of rocks and obstructions that make white water, make the water all turbulent. Happens much more frequently up north, those ancient rivers. Florida has only so many relatively ancient rivers, not to say you only have a quality river when it's really big and ancient, but I just can't help. I'm drawn to the Suwannee River in so many ways, I suppose. Also, the Santa Fe is really nice. Lots of springs, wildness. The river literally goes underground for a few miles. I checked that out, man. I didn't snorkel it or scuba dive it, but people have. I just checked it out. It's like the river ends. It's like, what the heck? You have a river and it just stops. And then you drive down a few miles and then hike a mile or two, and the river just pops up out of nowhere, seemingly. That's what ancient karst does. It can make the river go underground. Although apparently during major floods it goes above ground. It can only store so much down there. Oh yeah, so early development did not happen around the mouth because people got lost and were getting too frustrated trying to find the main river channel of the Suwannee and kayaking down there. Yeah, there's a bunch of creeks. Some of them are bigger than others. Very tidal, very confusing if you don't have a map. You don't know where you're going. Which I kayaked I would say all throughout there, but I only really went down the West Pass and up the East Pass. And yeah, but I know you don't want to be overwhelmed down there. If you ever kayak down there, which I definitely would recommend before sea level rise, blessing and a curse, because it's going to go away, but especially to see those savannas and just a whole bunch of osprey. I saw one with a ladyfish. I posted that video, but actually being there and experiencing it yourself, potentially. I don't think I saw any dolphins, but I know I saw one, and I heard one sturgeon jump right before sunset. Anyways, I'll probably talk more about that in the future, potentially another video. But because they didn't make the capital around the Suwannee River, that fended off development. And then apparently earlier than that, people developed along the St. John's River because it didn't have major rapids, which blocked a lot of easy boat travel, which the St. John's River doesn't have many obstructions or rapids, So it's just smooth sailing, which is why you had steamboats going down the Ocklawaha before the Ocklawaha was dammed, going to Silver Springs, and that's definitely a mighty impressive river system that's been occupied, developed, still impressive, still worthy of visits. But if you want to see real wild, real pristine, that's what Suwannee River's about. I don't know, they're both impressive in their own ways and worthy of visiting. But yeah, I think it's just interesting. There's two sections of the Suwannee River that for some reason or other fended off people settling. And it's kind of interesting that the largest Civil War battle in Florida happened near the Suwannee River and was very intertwined with it. And I would talk about that, but some documentaries talk very much better about that than I could. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, rivers used to be a main source of travel, right? You didn't have highways, which is why the bypass, or not the bypass canal, the cross Florida barge canal would have been a big, massive economic disaster for environment, but also would have been good for quote-unquote progress had highway systems not been invented. I don't know. I know a lot of ecosystems out there in the world have been destroyed, essentially lost their unique wildlife. Vaquita dolphin of the Yangtze River, most recent victim. And a lot of people feel for that. They feel for the mammals. But also, we lost the Chinese paddlefish. And I think one of the sturgeons went extinct in the wild on the Yangtze River, even though they banned fishing over there. But there's a whole way too much damming and pollution. That's what happens. It's nastier than people think. It affects the dynamic, holy, super grand. I think even the giant stingray is endangered, which that's kind of sad. But I've heard from the first time I went to the Suwannee River, talking to the Suwannee Gables owner, I didn't see jumping sturgeon because it was in March. Even though they start going up the river in February, I think they don't really start jumping until well into summer, May through August. Yeah, because I visited early May. I was like, I'm not sure if they're going to be jumping, because I heard the max, apparently they jump the most in the warmest months, but they definitely jump enough, at least in the around sunset. Even at night, I was surprised they were still jumping at night. And I would definitely recommend the Airbnb I went to. It was in Old Town, right on the river. Which if I rent an Airbnb on that section of the Lower Suwannee, I'll definitely get that one. So relaxing to just sturgeon watch and be on the river. Well, assuming even with people on the river, still pretty big and impressive one. Have much peace of mind, and you can get that in lots of places in nature. I'm just talking about my perspectives, but oh yeah, so the Suwannee Gables, the motel owner on the Suwannee River in the lower section, was telling me, yeah, a lot of people from Europe would visit there. You know, probably hear so much about the Suwannee River, you want to check it out. And I know sturgeon over there have really been decimated, and in Asia they're still hanging on apparently, but for how much longer, I don't know. And at least there's some sturgeon up north in North America somewhere that are thriving even more than Gulf sturgeon. I know technically there's sturgeon in St. John's River system, but they're very, very rare because of so much dredging, pollution, damming of the Ocklawaha, which is one of the reasons why I was really invested emotionally in the fight to tear down the Ocklawaha Dam. But I know that will probably be going on for years and years, and I have to pick my battles and do it wisely. I was tempted to make a slideshow video of that, but I'm not going to burn myself out, and there's already so many quality documentaries about that damn dam. But yeah, if anyone's interested in making a video like that, there's a great template video that inspired me to want to do that on the Inglis Dam on the lowermost Withlacoochee. Somebody made a quality video that started out objective, overall sticking to the facts, but also talking about how dams damage the ecosystem. I could post a link about that if anyone wants it. But yeah, life's about still enjoying yourself despite all the nasty things out there, I suppose. I'm definitely going to post this video. Sorry for the minimal editing. I'm in a time crunch. I need to post this to get people aware of the environmental catastrophes of Florida. Be aware we have our most precious resources: water and springs, rivers, fishing, very intertwined with the water quality. But people keep moving in here. Everybody pollutes and draws water. They're only adding to the problem, and I don't know, it's kind of a tragedy of the commons, and it is our responsibility to, or at least the leaders' responsibility, and we should elect people who care about it's in their interest too, because if Florida becomes a cesspool, right, that has no nice swamps and nice rivers, and it's all just a shadow of its former self, probably that, yeah, there's still going to be people here when it's underwater and not so nice, but you're going to have much less tourism revenue. You're going to have much less nature out there to recover from, to use, or not, you know what I mean. We're not using nature, we're coexisting. It's a nice balance. And I think I've talked about this, but before, I like being out in nature and doing a cleanup, but then again, it is kind of a free pickup trash system. So if people were constantly picking up after all these idiots' trash, then it would kind of be a free trash service, and they would throw their trash around even more. But it is not to be selfish, not to expect anything, but just to give back to nature but even just reducing your consumption, eat less meat, which I've definitely been doing some. Nobody's perfect, especially when you work a physical job. Still have to get some protein. You can still get protein with nuts and other sources, but definitely everybody doing a little bit does way more than a few people going to the absolute max, thinking they're not producing any plastic waste. Even if you buy things in bulk, they still are transported with plastic. So it's not an all or nothing thing, but definitely reduce, reuse, recycle. But even then, they don't recycle most stuff. So your best bet is to, I'm not going to open this can, but definitely limit how many kids you have, and reduce, reuse, and recycle when you can. Steel stuff, metal, that kind of stuff. They just try to make you feel good saying, oh, you can recycle all this plastic, but most of the time I should start reusing a cup, right? Because it felt like a hassle, but then you think, if I buy coffee all the time and I'm not using a reusable cup, it's just filling the landfills, and the landfills can leach, even if, I don't know, it adds up. I know that. Okay, but if you guys have any questions, suggestions, thoughts, I wish I could find more information about people going through environmental grief. It seems like people are mostly bemoaning the climate crisis and the water crisis somewhat, though there's a lot of rivers I know that are way more impacted than the Suwannee. People need to stop moving here to farm and agriculture, and but with other rivers drying up, they're definitely going to move here. So definitely enjoy it while you can. But if you don't need that kind of grief in your life, then and you have enough things to love, then good for you. Right? Yeah, good for you. Just definitely not code for anything else. Yeah, that's about it. I know there's probably going to be something I missed or overlooked, got sidetracked, but I'll either leave a comment or make another video eventually. Holy crap, this is an hour. I feel tempted to push this out to an hour, but I'm always more about quality over quantity. Yeah, pretty much for the most part. And there's minimal editing on this. I'm sorry about that, but also looking out for my own environments and best interests. I can only help the environment if I stay healthy and happy relatively and laughing, loving, learning. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and if anybody's been to the Apalachicola and can compare it with the Suwannee, I know they're similar yet different, just as the St. Johns River is similar yet different to the Suwannee. Probably less drastic differences between the Suwannee and Apalachicola, because the St. Johns is actually pretty sluggish, very, very gradual slope. Over the 310 miles, it only drops like 30 feet, so it only goes like half a mile an hour on average most of the year. So very good for fishing, definitely overpopulated, but still nice environment. I like it. Very nice, I like. But yeah, and also, if you have experienced any really, really great environmental grief, I'm sorry if these brought up memories, but definitely I'd be interested in your thoughts, opinions, views of... I know when people go through major grief, they only think of sadness and they try to forget and suppress, but I think, especially going through major friend pet grief, I like to be reminded of the good times and the lessons and live for their memory, not just bemoan. I think it'll be similar even if worse comes to worse with environmental catastrophes in Florida. I still like to be reminded at least every once in a while of the great accessible... It was looking like gas was going to be so expensive I could never travel, but I don't know, with this inflation, you never know with the future what it holds, so you gotta live, learn, laugh, love as much as you can, if I've learned anything. Yeah, thanks for listening, stopping by, and I'll catch you guys next time. I think sure is hot in here. Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit for November. Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks.